Welcome to Peak Analytics.
Let's spend some time with Ed Pink, the quiet genius whose fingerprints are on nearly every major chapter of American motorsports. Born in 1928, in a Los Angeles still shaking off the dust of the Great Depression, Ed's world was a symphony of clattering Model Ts, the whine of early superchargers, and the salty tang of Pacific Ocean air mixing with burnt racing fuel. His story isn't just about engines, it's about obsession, about the kind of love affair with machinery that keeps a man hunched over a lathe at 2 a.m., squinting through cigarette smoke to measure 1,000th of an inch that might mean the difference between victory and catastrophe. If Ed's story speaks to you, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more untold tales of the legends who built racing history. You can almost picture young Ed in the late 1930s, a wiry kid with grease under his nails, haunting junkyards for discarded parts. By 14, he'd bought that first Model T, not to joyride, but to dissect like a biologist studying anatomy. He'd drag it to El Mirage Dry Lake, where the flat expanse became his laboratory. Here, amid the other speed-crazed dreamers, Ed learned a truth that would define his life. Power is nothing without control. An engine might scream like a banshee on the starting line, but if it couldn't survive the brutal simplicity of a straight-line sprint, it was just noise. The 1940s found Ed at Lou Bainey's speed shop in Burbank, a dimly lit haven where drag racing's future legends gathered. This was no corporate garage, it was a brotherhood of misfits, men who spoke in the cryptic language of lobe separation angles and quench zones. Ed didn't just assemble engines, he reverse-engineered failure. When a connecting rod snapped or a piston melted, he'd study the carnage like a detective, decoding the story in the stress fractures and burnt valves. It was here he met Tommy Evo, the flamboyant showman whose four-engine dragster became a canvas for Ed's growing mastery. Together, they were the odd couple Evo with his Hollywood grin, Ed with his ever-present shop rag and squint of concentration. But their partnership birthed monsters that redefined what a dragster could be. 1957 marked the birth of Ed Pink Racing Engines, a nondescript shop in Van Nuys that would become hallowed ground. The 1960s roared in with nitro-fueled chaos, and Ed's engines were at the heart of it. While rivals chased horsepower numbers like gamblers chasing a jackpot, Ed obsessed over the unsexy details oil flow patterns, bearing clearances, the metallurgy of a single valve spring. His engines didn't just win, they endured. When Don Prudhomme's Snake dragster crossed the line at 250 miles per hour, the crowd saw a showman's triumph. Those in the know saw Ed's handiworker mill that could survive Nitro's apocalyptic fury, then do it again next weekend. The 1970s brought funny cars, their flip-top bodies and wheel-standing antics capturing America's imagination. Ed's shop became a sanctuary for drivers like Shirley Muldowney, the first lady of drag racing, who needed engines as tough as her reputation. Muldowney's rivals scoffed at a woman in the cockpit, but Ed never blinked. To him, a racer was a racer, and his engines spoke one language: victory. Meanwhile, the shop's back rooms buzzed with innovation. Ed's team experimented with fuel injection years before it became standard, tinkered with turbocharging when others still swore by carburetors. By the 1980s, when many of his peers had retired or faded into irrelevance, Ed pivoted to Indy Car. The Cosworth DFX engines he helped refine were masterpieces of efficiency, their turbocharged V8s humming at 12,000 RPM for 500 grueling miles at Indianapolis. Where others saw a leap into the unknown, Ed saw physics puzzles waiting to be solved. He'd sit with young engineers, sketching airflow diagrams on napkins, explaining how a tweak to the exhaust pulse could mean an extra 5 miles per hour down the straightaway. Through it all, Ed remained an enigma. While Don Garlitz had his museum and Evo his TV spots, Ed preferred the shadows. His office was a battered stall by the dyno room, where he'd sip coffee from a chipped mug and really listen to the engines. "Hear that miss at 6,000 RPM, he'd mutter, long before sensors could detect it. "Intake valve's lazy, needs more spring." At home, Ed was a family man, though fiercely private. His son Bill followed him into the trade, absorbing lessons not through lectures, but by watching his father's hands. The way they cradled a crankshaft like a newborn, the calluses that told stories of 1,000 late-night rebuilds. Ed's idea of a vacation, a cross-country drive in an unassuming sedan, stopping at every small-town drag strip to chat with local gearheads. Now, at 96, Ed still visits the shop that bears his name. The industry he helped build is almost unrecognizable computers, now map combustion chambers. AI simulates airflow, but his presence is a living bridge to racing's soul. When a young engineer shows him a 3D printed prototype, Ed doesn't scoff. He nods, asks thoughtful questions, then shares a story about how they once fixed a blown Hemi with baling wire and a prayer. Ed Pink's legacy isn't just in the trophies or the speed records. It's in the generations of builders who still whisper his name like an incantation when they're facing a tough problem. It's in the smell of fresh-cut aluminum and racing fuel that still hangs in his shop, a perfume of passion and perseverance. In a world that increasingly values flash over substance, Ed's life stands as a monument to the quiet power of mastery, to the belief that if you listen closely enough, even an engine can tell you its secrets. So here's to Ed Pink, the man who taught us that true speed isn't found in a throttle, but in the patience to get every detail right. If his story ignites something in you, share it. Tag someone who still believes that greatness is built, not bought. And if you've ever felt the thrill of an engine coming alive under your hands, take a moment to thank the old master. Without him, the symphony of motorsports would sound very different indeed.